Hey guys, just wanted to remind you that if you ever get the chance, just go ahead and leave a review for me, please. Either the stars or you guys can leave a written one. That'd be awesome too. And also, you guys can find me on any social media at Jexplex. Go ahead, drop a follow on all of those. That way, you guys can stay updated. YouTube channels coming up. I got this podcast on 11 different platforms. Using TikTok a lot more recently. So let's just keep growing. And yeah, just please leave a review if you guys can. Appreciate it.
Yo, Jackplex, answer the fucking phone, dude.
Hello.
Jack.
You're a 911 call operator, right?
Yeah.
How did you get into the job in the first place?
Before I went to the military, I was already working with the sheriff's office. And when I got out, I was like, why not just go back to the sheriff's office? And I saw the positions open for the call taker. And I just applied for it and I got it.
What are your favorite parts of the job?
I'd have to say, like, the successful calls and cops making it on time, being able to save whoever they were needing to save, or, like, when medics make it on time. You know, it's, like, a good feeling to know that, like, whatever that person was going through, they're better now.
So it's definitely more of like, when it comes to jobs like firefighting, 911, call operating, like those are jobs that you get like almost like a spiritual happiness, if that makes sense, or like an intrinsic happiness where you do something that's like better for like the world, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, or for someone
Of
else. You know what I
knowing
mean?
that somebody's doing better when they were at one of their worst points they've had, like in their life or their day or something like that, you know?
How has that changed your perspective on the world?
It's kind of like basically knowing that there's a lot of wrong going on, but we don't see it a lot because, you know, we're not supposed to be everywhere at once and being a call taker. You're basically the ear that's there listening to everybody, seeing what's all going on. And it's kind of like, man, there's so much shit going on and nobody really knows about it or sees.
They say that the lawyer sees the wicked part of the humanity, the doctor sees the unhealthy. In a sense, you're kind of seeing like, would you say like the worst of humanity in some cases, or like the sickest parts of humanity on occasion when you get some of these calls?
I wouldn't say the worst. It's more like just the accidents, really. Like nobody ever plans to be wicked. Nobody ever plans to get into an accident. Kind of just being there when, basically, whenever something out of the ordinary just happens, you know.
What's the most memorable call that has affected you? You think as a 911 call operator?
I had to say it was a call we got. Basically, somebody's fiance called, and I thought everything was normal, and then she starts breaking down, saying that her husband's choking, he's not breathing, and he's starting to change colors. So obviously, I transfer over to the EMT side, and then they're walking the brother through CPR, and then finally, the guy that was choking spits up his food, and then the medics walk in, and they update our call list saying that he's finally breathing again and his pulse is back to normal. So it's good knowing that a guy is where his heart was stopping, he was gonna be dead any minute soon. Seeing that he just came back and he's doing better now, and he's back with his family. Crazy how a normal family dinner could turn into a possible death scenario.
What's crazy about it too is that even just with like, for example, like the show, I've talked to a lot of people just about like some crazy ass experiences that they've had in their lives, and I feel like I tend to connect with people, at least in previous episodes, that seem to be very self-aware and have healed for the most part from the events that they've experienced. Even when I hear about stories after the fact, it still stresses me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like when you're in the moment and you're on the phone and like you feel like the actual stress and like the heat of the moment, like how does your body feel? Like do you ever get used to it?
It's kind of like, so when you're taking calls, there's a lot of downtime in between. So you gotta be ready for like that jump of adrenaline, like if something crazy is going on, and you just basically gotta sit there and process the call while you're basically wired. You know, you can't lose your composure and freak out with them. You know, you're their rock. You can't really just freak out alongside them. You gotta make sure they get the help that they need, or else, you know, something bad can happen, or you could probably lose a life.
Was there ever a call that you genuinely felt that you were just like on the verge of freaking out?
Yeah, I had a call like that once, and you know, I did what I needed to, got all my information. As soon as I had all my information, I had to give it to somebody else because I already felt like my nerves were shot.
So it seems as though for the most part though, in your experience, you've been able to maintain a grounded state of mind for the most part, right?
Oh yeah, like you have to keep a ground, like a good mental state. If you have any choke or you're rude to somebody or anything like that, they're already having a bad day. That's why they're calling out. You can't be rude to them. They could be rude to you, but you got to understand that they're obviously struggling with something going on, and they're just taking it out. They're venting it. You can't turn it around and raise your voice at them. You just gotta learn how to control them. Bring them back down.
So I read about this case, and it was actually a couple months ago that I read about this case, and I cannot remember. You guys know me. I had to go back and confirm which case it was that I was talking about because I want you guys to see what I'm talking about. So I couldn't find the particular case that I was discussing in this one. So instead, I'm going to read one that was quite similar. And the title goes, Houston dispatcher are sentenced for hanging up on thousands of callers. A former Houston 911 operator who hung up on thousands of people, including calls for help during robberies and homicides, will spend 10 days in jail and 18 months on probation. Her name was Crescenda Williams, and she had spent a year and a half taking 911 calls at the Houston Emergency Center until she was caught in August 2016 and fired by the city. A supervisor who oversaw Williams was ultimately also placed on a year of internal probation, officials said at the time. Her misdeeds came to light after HEC officials performing routine monthly audits of 911 calls noticed a high volume of Williams' calls lasted less than 20 seconds, known as short calls. In a news release detailing the sentencing, prosecutors said that a review of call records showed Williams hung up on thousands of short calls. The calls included one where a caller tried to report a violent robbery, another where a caller dialed 911 concerned about two drivers racing in an area on Interstate 45 where people had been killed speeding just weeks earlier. Harris County prosecutors said the county had an obligation to hold public servants criminally accountable when they break the law and the community's trust. Quote, the citizens of Harris County rely on 911 operators to dispatch help in their time of need, unquote, said Lauren Reeder, a Harris County prosecutor. When Williams' actions were initially exposed, HAC manager Joe Laud called them an anomaly. Quote, this is just a very significant event, Laud said at the time. Quote, and we feel that her actions do not represent all the call takers in this facility or call takers in general. They have a very specific interest in doing a great job in providing emergency response to people. Like I said before, that's not the same call. That's a different one. But that anomaly of that stereotype of 911 dispatchers being rude or 911 dispatchers hanging up on people. There have been a couple different cases on it, and I just wanted to see his opinion on it, and I wanted to let you guys hear a little bit more about the case. So yeah, back to the calls. And I want to hear your opinion on it. So it was a 911 call operator, and I want your opinion on the call and the stereotype, I guess, that people have of 911 call operators. So basically what happened during the call was that this woman was hiding in her room, and she was thinking that her boyfriend was going to come inside of her house and murder her. And he was looking for her, and she was on the phone with 911. And so she kept repeating some same phrase over and over to the 911 call operator. And then the call operator just said, I guess he got fed up with it. And then he was like, you could just help yourself. And then he hung up on her. She actually ended up dying that same day because he actually did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. With that story, I didn't even know about this, but I read about this case. And this actually led me to just reading a little bit more about 911 call operating in general. Because I'm very curious about, I feel like it'd be very beneficial to society if everybody knew perspectives from like teachers, doctors, surgeons, like people who actually be doing shit in society. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt, 911 call operators do a lot for society. I'm reading about it and I found out that I guess there's this sort of stereotype that 911 call operators can be rude in some cases because they just be dealing with so much stuff like every day. So first off, what's your opinion on like that case that I told you?
So on that case, she pretty much had that episode that we see as call takers. So when you're already having an emergency, say like if it's a medical emergency, as soon as they pick up the phone, they're probably thinking, I need an ambulance, I need an ambulance, I need an ambulance. So when they answer the phone, that's all they can spit back out. And you're like, okay, that's when you gotta ground them in. You gotta ask what's going on, what's their location. Well, really, you ask the location first. That's like the number one thing you're gonna need. For the call taker to actually just start getting rude and, basically cutting her off or repeating the same phrase, that's basically just losing his grounding, losing the professionalism. Pretty cut and dry. That's a really like rare apple that happens, because people could get into serious trouble for doing something like that, which most likely probably happened in that call taker's case. Either he's probably not with the department that he was with or whatever else can happen. So we are held liable if we handle a call poorly.
No, he got put in jail, I believe. And then as for the stereotype where people kind of think that 911 caller operators can be kind of rude, do you think there's like a grain of truth to that in your experience?
It could just be like one bad apple every now and again, but sometimes call operators can get, in order to actually force information out of people. Sometimes they just don't want to answer our questions or things like that, and we have to actually ask in a stern voice to get our information. When you call 911, we need to ask our vital pieces of information before sending a cop out to you, and that's not what a lot of people understand. A lot of people think that most of the questions we ask are stupid and things like that, but not only is it for your safety, it's also for our safety in order to send somebody out. We can't, if you call 911 saying, I need a cop, we're struggling to get your address and things like that. Well, we don't know where you live. Some people that call, we don't always get your number. You're going to have to tell us your number. And if you just say, I need a cop, well, what do you need a cop for? And I'm not going to tell you, I just need a cop. Well, I mean, the cop's going to go with already that mentality of expecting the unexpected, It's always best to just ground yourself, know why you're calling.
How long have you worked as a dispatcher?
A few months now.
Find pretty often when people work a job, either their faith in a profession increases or decreases. Do you think that working as a dispatcher has increased your faith in emergency services?
Yeah, it definitely has. Like, you see what all is going on, and then, you see how spread out everybody is, and how many people actually need the police, how many people actually need an ambulance, and how many people actually need a fire truck. Like, there's so much going on that people don't realize it. Everybody's in their own little worlds, but once you start to factor in everybody else's world around them, it's like opening up Pandora's box. There's just so much in there.
Sense, kind of like walk me through, because like I definitely hear what you're saying, because I have like that slight little bit of experience from volunteering, just generally speaking, in my city, and just seeing like bits and pieces here and there. But you live this, you know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure that for most listeners that are going to be listening, they haven't like lived it as thoroughly as you have. So like take me through like an example of like a range of calls that you might be taking throughout the day, like how it fluctuates.
You get on your shift. It really depends on what time of day you're on, but most likely you're going to be getting pocket dials, people calling in about accidents is like the main one. Like, you'd be surprised on how many people just get into small fender benders, and every now and then the occasional major accident. And then a lot of the times, like throughout the night, you'll end up having people having like domestic issues, people calling noise complaints and things like that. There's really nothing crazy going on until like the very crazy calls are like, I guess like 1 in every 100, I guess, if I could put a number on it.
Do you ever fear getting a crazy call?
No, because I mean, if I'm already fearing it, I'm already expecting it. It's gonna happen. Like, there's no, oh, I only want these type of calls today or things like that. It's gonna be unexpected when you get it, and then at that point, your nerves are gonna be running like at 100 miles an hour. So it's better to know, like, if you're getting a fastball thrown at you, how to catch it.
So you definitely just try to live more in the present moment.
Yeah.
And
you can't why a person's calling or what they're calling about. All you can handle is how you're going to process the call and get them the help that they need.
As a 911 dispatcher, like, what are some things that you want people to know about how they should handle calling in a 911?
So when they call, I notice like a lot of people don't actually know where they are. Like, when something happens, you can ask them, be like, okay, what's your location? They'll be like, I'm at the grocery store on this street. It's like, well, you know how many grocery stores on that street? I don't know the address. Or I'm on some major highway. Well, what exit are you by? Or, what do you see around you? We don't see these things. Only you can tell us where you are. And then with the questions that we ask, just answer our questions. We're not asking anything stupid. We just filling in what we need to so the cop knows what kind of situation he's walking into,
So it seems as though, for the most part, you've kind of talked about pocket dials. I guess we could put that as like, if there were tiers to this, that'd be like tier 1 of just like a call, right? Like, just a call that just happens every now and then. Pocket calls, you got like tier 2, maybe like a fender bender here and there. Tier 3, like maybe like a serious-ish accident. But how do you feel? I'm sure you've had a couple calls that are just like, that wake you up to, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a call. Just generally speaking in life, we just see moments that wake us up to how tragic the world can be. Since you might encounter this more on the daily from a different perspective than most people, because you actually have to ground people and help them work through it, How has that shifted your perspective on tragedy, really, and how we're all mortal?
I say it's really put it into focus to like know that we're here temporarily. Anything can happen at any given time to actually take us out from this reality. Like nobody is expecting anything. It just happens.
Was there a particular moment or call that just absolutely shocked this into you?
Yeah, like I had one to where a parent came home and they saw a loved one was just unresponsive and they were healthy, they didn't have no issues, and just gone. Like nothing happened. Just the freak of nature. Everything can be ticking right, and just the one thing that just clicks in the wrong direction, you're just gone. But it's not like, put fear in everybody that, oh, everybody's a ticking time bomb, your end of days can be whenever. No, it's just keep doing what you're doing. Nobody's time is ever set in stone. Everything's always in flux.
I kind of want to delve into more about like the psychology of the job a little bit when it comes to you as a human being when you got to deal with this shit. Because I mean, all of us can kind of take a look at the news and we can kind of get lost in how the world can be. And once again, like I said, you have this different perspective where you're in this position where you gotta willfully and happily, which is such a good trait, with respect to you, really. You're willfully and happily going ahead to help people in your own way by being a dispatcher, and a very just a good position really to do that for people. So how do you deal with it? Do you see a psychologist or therapist on the side? How do you like decompress after like maybe like a rough call or a rough day at work?
So like at work, really what I do is just if I ever get like a stressful call, you just take a little breather, just walk away for a second. You don't really just want to be bottled up and then handling the rest of the calls, all shaken up. Because then you might like not jot something down the right way that it's supposed to be or things like that. It's okay. Like it's not frowned upon to step away when you've had a very shaky call. We actually encourage that for most of the callers. And it's always good to just talk to somebody about it. And then we do have therapists and stuff that we are allowed to contact whenever we have an issue. If say we got something that really shook us up and we don't want to take any calls anymore.
In your experience, has that ever happened to you?
No, I've had it to where like a call was shaking me up, and then I just stop what I'm doing and then take like a few minutes of breathing time, and then I just get back to it.
So would you consider yourself lucky, if that makes sense, or would you just consider yourself a grounded person, or a combination of both?
Like, what do you mean as in lucky?
Lucky as in, okay, so like take this for example, right? Like a couple weeks ago, maybe a year ago, I don't even know how long ago this conversation was. Me and my friends were talking about who would survive in a zombie apocalypse and who wouldn't. And one of my friends said that I wouldn't survive, even though I consider myself relatively physically fit, able to survive. But she said that the reason why I wouldn't be able to is because, like, if I saw like a child zombie, I wouldn't be able to kill it, for example. Like that would be like the thing that would do it in for me. You know what I mean? So when I say lucky, I mean like, do you consider yourself lucky in the sense that there hasn't been something or a particular situation or moment that's fallen on you in such a way to like break you? Because you know that we all have different tolerances for different things, or some things bother us more than other things. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, like, do you think that you're lucky in the sense that you haven't experienced anything or had to deal with anything like that, or that you're grounded, or just a combination of just both?
I say just both, because I really wouldn't consider myself lucky in that sense. You never know, like the person having that call, it's obviously their unlucky day, and grounded is enough to just understand what they're going through. So I guess it would be just a combination of both.
How are your coworkers for the most part? Do you ever see them getting shaken up?
Not really. I mean, they've been doing it a lot longer than I have, and most of them don't even get phased by anything really. They all know how to handle calls appropriately and how to give people what they need in a timely manner and stuff like that.
And we've talked about kind of like tragedy, how some people just be misusing 911. I don't get it. Some people just be calling 911 for no reason, or like the pocket dials, as we talked about. And then when it comes to like really wicked things like murder or anything like that, how has that shifted your perspective on that?
So for murders, it's just like a rare occasion. Nobody ever. Well, I wouldn't say ever, but it does happen, but it's extremely rare. What I have seen is a lot of like people just dying for disputes on the road. Crazy how people like you don't even know the person, you just shoot off a fire shots at somebody on the road for no reason,
So
and
road
like
rage is pretty common.
yeah,
You know what? When I was growing up, my mom always told me not to pick a fight with anybody on the road, and I always did wonder why. But as I grew up, I kind of grew to understand more and more. I think I was 8 or 9. I was watching the news. There was a group of people car. I think somebody cut them off on the highway, and then they all pulled out pistols and shot at this one car.
yeah. It's like people are just loose cannons. You don't know anybody. Like sure, somebody cuts you off, but just let it go. At the end of the day, there's so many people around you, and you probably just never see that person again. But in those few seconds, you start picking a fight with them. What's gonna stop them from pulling a gun out, and shooting you?
And it's crazy because sometimes I think like I don't really feel the need to ever honk or anything unless somebody's like gonna hit me or something, like they're actually going to hit me, or like somebody just
Yeah.
needs to go. Like I rarely honk. But if someone just like cuts me off or whatever, I never honk just because I don't care. But then on top of that, I think about, what if on that off chance this is somebody
Yeah.
who's, because people would just wake up willing to pick a fight sometimes, bro.
Oh yeah, like you'd be surprised the amount of people that just want to start fights for some reason. And then sometimes when we're processing a call, they want to fight with us. It's like I'm just a call taker. I'm just trying to get you help.
Even from the perspective as like a call taker, you see that people just kind of like want to pick a fight with you. How do you think that reflects on humanity? Like, what do you think that says about the person?
I think a lot of people like don't factor into their temper and tend to just let loose when they're having a bad day. Sure, you're having something bad, but you don't have to force that up onto somebody else. We're just there to process information and get you the help that you need to go about your day. To, to
You're so
just
chill.
like there's no like going through a lot, knowing people and things like that. Like you just gotta understand. Like somebody's having a bad day, they're gonna get through it. At the end of the day, you're still breathing, you're still walking. You can't be mad at us. We're just here.
Do you have anybody in your family also who's a 911 dispatcher, or it's just really just you?
Yeah, it's just me.
So once you started taking this job, once again, you've talked about how when you took the job, it kind of like opened up your perspective to like what goes on in a city in a day. What would be your advice to people in general? Just take it easy, pretty much.
I say pick up safe driving habits. Small fender benders are extremely common. Know your surroundings, things of that nature. Can't really control when somebody wants to go out and steal some stuff from a store or assault somebody or just rob somebody. But one thing you can change is, or give advice on, is people just picking up better driving habits.
Yeah, driving for sure is definitely the most unpredictable thing that commonly happens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And do you have like any more memorable calls that come to mind that you're willing to share?
Not really. And then, should I say the amount of like crazy calls we get too?
Sure.
You'd be surprised too. And then sometimes they just keep calling, and it's like, well, sometimes it's somebody that already knows what they're doing, and they just spam 911. Other times it's actual legit crazy people calling in.
When you guys got to deal with somebody who's mentally ill and calling the phone, is there like a certain procedure to that y'all got to use?
So we basically just try to get as much information as we can that they're willing to give. A lot of times it's either their phone's disconnected or they're calling from a blocked number or using one of those calling apps, and we can't get any information. Sometimes they just call, ramble a bunch of things off, and then hang up. We can't really send somebody out without knowing who they're going to.
In a sense, you kind of talked about like Pandora's box. When I think of 911 dispatcher, I think a lot about, kind of like the worst of humanity. Maybe if somebody calls in, God forbid, like, somebody witnesses a murder, somebody calls after perhaps like a rape, somebody calls after something very, very a tragedy, really. And then you got like the accidents, whatever. I think the part that just baffles me the most is just like, because I know that a lot of people actually call 911 just because they're lonely, or they actually just want someone to talk to, or they want some type of like attention. You know what I mean?
I have had people call to where, like, say they're feeling suicidal, things like that. And they want to just vent, or they just want somebody on the phone to know that they care. When that happens, we do end up staying on the line. We do hear you out. We do talk to you and engage with you to try to get you some help and try to send an officer out to meet with you to discuss what's making you feel this way. We do actually care about these types of calls. It's not like we don't. Like, oh, you're suicidal? Okay. No, like, we actually just sit there. A call taker's human too. Everybody's happy go lucky. We just gotta sit and talk what's going on, why you're feeling the way that you are. and how to talk you out of it, just enough to where somebody can be there to talk with you in person rather than somebody that's over the phone that you don't know and you can't make a connection to.
I mean, it sounds like you've encountered that same type of call before, right?
Yeah, I have.
I guess actually the next question I have is like, which kind of call hits you the hardest most of the time, generally speaking? Calls like that.
Yeah, it's sometimes like when that happens, say we do have to disconnect or they disconnect, and you're just waiting, hoping to know that they're all right later on, you know? We don't always hear an answer, but it's good to know, like, when we do hear an answer, what actually happened.